on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a questions and answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. Mr. Musk, you may begin your conference.
Okay, so it was a great day, and we accomplished all of our primary mission objectives. Satellites were deployed successfully. I believe our satellite customers already receiving data from their satellite, in the case of Cassiope. And yeah, it was a really, really great day. We demonstrated a lot of new technology successfully, including the Merlin 1D engine, the new stage separation system, the much taller rocket, which structurally performed very well, the 17-foot diameter fairing, which separated successfully, no problems there. And overall, really great. There were a couple of optional things that we tried to do, which were relights of the upper stage and of the boost stage. In the case of the upper stage relight, we initiated relight and the system encountered an anomaly and did not complete the relight. We believe we understand what that issue is and should have it addressed in time for the next flight of the Falcon 9. Other than that, the ascent phase was excellent, and yeah, and that final burn was actually just a sideways burn, just to check propellant residuals. So then going to the boost stage, the boost stage actually initiated 2 burns. One was lighting 3 engines to do a supersonic retropropulsion. I believe it's the first time that any rocket stage has attempted to do a supersonic retropropulsion. And it lit 3 of the 9 engines and completed that maneuver well. Came back through atmospheric reentry and survived without coming back into the atmosphere without a problem. Previously, our first stages have always essentially exploded upon re-entering the atmosphere due to the extreme forces they encounter. But as a result of the retro burn, we made it through. And we controlled the stage with a fair bit of precision to a landing point, with the center engine. So there's a single engine burn, and that relight also went really well. However, we exceeded the roll control authority of the attitude control thrusters. So in this case, the boost stage did not have landing gear, which helps to essentially stabilize the stage like fins on an aircraft or yeah, empennage section on an aircraft. So the stage actually ended up spinning to a degree that was greater than we could control with the gas thrusters, and it centrifuged the propellant. So it caused the boost stage to run out of propellant because of the centrifuging effect before hitting the water. So it hit the water relatively hard. We've recovered portions of the stage, and the most important thing is we now believe we have all the pieces of the puzzle. So if you take the grasshopper tests, where we were able to do a precision takeoff and landing of a Falcon 9 first stage, and then you combine it with results from this flight, we were able to successfully transition from vacuum through hypersonic, through supersonic, through transonic, and light engines all the way through, and control the stage all the way through. We have the whole, we have all the pieces necessary to achieve a full recovery of the boost stage. So I'm really excited about doing that, and I think we'll achieve that next year. So yeah, that's I think the biggest. That's actually what's got me the most excited about this flight, is I think we now have all the pieces of the puzzle necessary to achieve full and rapid reusability of the Falcon 9 boost stage. All right, with that, let's transition to questions.
At this time, I'd like to remind everyone, in order to ask a question, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. And your first question comes from Stephen Clark, Space Flight Now.
Hey, Elon, first of all, congratulations. A couple of questions on the second stage restart. Go into a little more detail on the issue you saw there, and I believe your next couple of flights, the QTO required to restart, or one restart of the second stage. So can you walk forward and tell us what that means for the next couple of flights in your manifesting?
Yeah, we're before making any sort of significant, before deciding, what the issue was, I think we want to have a bit more time to review the data. But before sort of coming to any definitive conclusion. But we essentially saw the engine initiate ignition, get up to about 400 psi, and then it encountered a condition that it didn't like. We think it may have been due to an extended spin start, maybe, but this is speculative. And so it initiated an abort of the restart. But we have all the data from the restart, so I'm confident we'll be able to sort it out and address it before the next flight. It's nothing fundamental. Yeah, I mean, I should mention, like on the test end, we've restarted the Merlin 1D engine, in some cases dozens of times. So it's not. We just have to iron out some slight differences of it operating in vacuum.
So you're confident that STS-8 launch coming up next will be able to go forward with minor fixes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
And your next question comes from Irene Klotz from Reuters.
Yeah.
Hi, Elon. Thanks very much. I wanted to know a couple of things. First, if you saw any unusual pad damage from using the new launch pad at Vandenberg, and also if you could just let us know if you had any engine anomalies at all. Did everything burn full duration, and how did the new engine configuration work out?
Sure. Did you catch my initial sort of opening remarks?
I did, but I just wanted to be real specific about all the burns were full duration.
Yeah, the ascent burns were, I mean, basically the first stage burn and the second stage burn were all full duration, and those actually went likely slightly better than expected. The second stage hit its target velocity vector a few seconds early, which means that the stage was actually performing a little better than expected, probably a higher specific impulse than anticipated. So the only anomalies that we're aware of thus far are the second stage restart, where we turned the stage sideways, and we're going to do a propeller completion burn. And then the first stage, which is essentially the third firing of the first stage, when it centrifuged the propellant just before hitting the ocean. Thanks.
And anything that you saw from launching out at Vandenberg, and anything that you saw about with the flying with the new engine configuration?
It actually went better than expected. It was incredibly smooth. Yeah, I mean the ascent was just picture perfect. Actually, I stood outside watching it until just before stage separation, and it was such an incredibly clear day. I don't know if you were watching it firsthand, but you could actually see the whole rocket go to space. I mean, literally exit the atmosphere, and you can actually look when you looked at the kind of the smoke trail. You could, or it's not sort of like a water vapor trail actually. You can see where where the atmosphere ends, because the engine keeps firing in the same way, and then suddenly the sort of water vapor trail ends, and that's where the atmosphere ends. I mean, it doesn't quite end, but it transitions to rarefied gas.
Yeah, definitely different than Florida.
Yeah, exactly. Florida, it's cloudy, you can't see what's going on. Or hazy at best, but it was just ultra clear.
Thanks. What was the apogee and perigee of the orbit after the second stage cutoff?
I'll give you some numbers, but I would just check them with my team before saying that they're definitively accurate. I think we were at 327 kilometers perigee and 1495 kilometers apogee. But let's just double check that before, because I'm kind of quoting off the cuff here.
Okay. Thanks very much.
All right.
Your next question comes from Michael Belfiore from Popular Mechanics.
Congratulations, and thank you for hosting this call. I was wondering, looking ahead, once you got the Grasshopper working on operational flights, what kind of performance hit will you expect from having extra fuel on board and also the landing gear?
Well, I think we effectively lose in terms of performance. Well, it's really going to depend on exactly what we want to do with the stage. So whether we, if we were to do an ocean landing or a return to launch site landing. If we do an ocean landing, the performance hit is actually quite small. It's maybe on the order of 15%, If we do return to launch site landing, it's probably double that. It's more like a 30% hit.
Are you talking about payload?
Yeah, exactly. Percentage of payload lost.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And your next question comes from Jonathan Amos from BBC London.
Elon, congratulations on a great flight.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions. Where does this leave you now for the SES mission? Because we've got a lot of commercial customers who are waiting to ride the Falcon. And then just on that issue of reusability, is sea return going to be easier to get approval for than a land return? Do you think, because of the for the obvious safety reasons, I guess. So SES and then where you go with a reusability.
Sure. So we believe we're on track to launch SES next month. There might be a few extra weeks to sort of just make sure we're super confident of the second stage restart. But from a hardware standpoint, we're ready to go with the SES next month. And then with a steady cadence of vehicles thereafter. The SES rocket, the Falcon 9 rocket that'll launch SES, is actually at Cape Canaveral in the hangar right now. So it's the first time we've actually had rockets at both launch sites in SpaceX history. It's also actually the first time we had both stages firing at the same time. So we had the upper stage continuing its orbit burn, and then the first doing a re-entry burn. So as far as the safety aspects of the return to launch site at the first stage, that's part of why we wanted to do it first in the ocean, just to make sure things were pretty fine. For any landing area, though, we would have the landing ellipse, the error that the stage could encounter would be an unpopulated region. So we would aim to have a landing site that's unpopulated with a radius of probably a couple of miles.
Okay, and you can achieve that at Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg?
We can, yeah.
Okay, that's great. And the reignitability of the upper stage, that is to get different orbits and also to deorbit the upper stage as well on some missions. Yeah.
It's rare to do a deorbit burn of the upper stage. That's unusual in the rocket world, but we probably would have the ability to do that in some cases. For low Earth orbit missions, the stage would effectively encounter a small amount of atmospheric drag and eventually re-enter and burn up.
Well, for some missions, you need to reignite to place satellites in slightly different configurations. Yeah.
Yeah. For the commercial missions to geostationary orbit, we do. It's a shorter coast than what we just did, but we coast for a little bit and then restart once we get close to the equator. So in that scenario, a restart is important for those missions. We can technically do them without a restart. We can do them as a single burn, but it means the satellite has to do more work to change the plane of its orbit to equatorial. So we can do it either way. The one that is the minimum work for the satellite does require a restart. But as I mentioned, we've restarted the Merlin. We've taken a single Merlin engine and restarted it literally dozens of times. So it's not a question of can this engine restart. We just need to iron out what were the differences between restarting in vacuum and microgravity versus restarting on the ground.
Terrific stuff. Congratulations, anyway.
Thank you.
And your next question comes from James Dean from Florida Today.
Yeah, thank you, Elon. I was wondering if will you be repeating these booster recovery efforts during the next launch from the Cape?
The next two launches, we're going to gather data from the first stage, but we're not going to attempt to recover it because we committed to give the customers on the next two flights maximum performance of the rocket. So when we first sold these flights, we didn't reserve enough performance to recover the first stage. So we don't expect to recover the first stage on the next two flights, but we do expect to get good reentry data again. And then the next recovery attempt for the first stage will be the fourth flight of this version, so 3 flights from now.
And could you run through the manifest and kind of approximate timing of your flights, say through like CRS-3?
Right. Well, we've got 2 geostationary flights, SES and TICOM, and then we've got the cargo resupply mission for NASA, the CRS flight, and it's on that CRS flight that's where we're going to try to bring the first stage back. And we are hoping to put the landing legs on that stage, and it's still debatable whether that stage will land with landing legs in the ocean or land with landing legs on land. But either way, we do want it to have the landing legs on.
Wow, cool. I'm sorry, just last question quickly. Is this really primarily what the upgrades of the vehicle are all about, or is it more payload related, and can you now do missions near term here that you couldn't have otherwise done? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, the most revolutionary thing about the new Falcon 9 is the potential ability to recover the boost stage, which is almost 3/4 of the cost of the rocket. And that's the most important thing about it. There are other improvements we've made to increase design reliability. For example, with stage separation, we've gone from 9 attached fittings and 3 pistons to just 3 pistons with integrated attached fittings. So it goes from 9 or 12 failure points down to just 3 on the stage separation. I think that's an improvement in reliability. This is also the first time we're flying the 17-foot diameter fairing. So proving that fairing works is obviously very important for satellite customers. That fairing is capable of taking the biggest satellites in the world. And then of course we proved out the Merlin 1D engine and having a much sort of longer rocket, which has more complicated bending modes, and making sure that the control system could deal with all of that. So we accomplished a lot today. I'm really happy about the results. We have a little bit of work to do, obviously, but all in all, I think it's been a great day.
Your next question comes from Warren Burster with Ace News.
Thanks for taking my call and for having the press conference. Elon, just a quick clarification, please, on the third CRS flight. I think that's been, correct me if I'm wrong, that's been pushed into early next year, perhaps February. You said you are going to have landing legs on the vehicle on this flight. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yeah, that's the plan. We're not going to hold up that flight for landing legs. So if landing legs end up being delayed for any reason, then we won't hold up the flight for that. But the default plan is to have landing legs on that mission, and the schedule for that mission is mostly driven by upgrades to the Dragon spacecraft, where we have an upgraded avionics system, and we're able to provide a lot more power to NASA for powered cargo. It essentially triples, I think, the amount of powered cargo that NASA can have. So I think that's what's driving that schedule, and it's a high priority for us to get that mission launched as soon as we can. But it's looking like probably sometime in February is most likely.
Okay. Second question is, you suggested a possibility of a land landing. Where might this vehicle land if you were to attempt that, and don't you require an FAA license for that, and do you have it?
Yeah, it would land. We've actually been working with Range Safety, Air Force Range Safety, and the FAA to identify landing locations at Cape Canaveral, and we've identified a few. And I don't think we're quite ready to say what those locations are, but they're kind of out on the tip of Cape Canaveral, sort of easternmost sort of tip of Cape Canaveral. Yeah, actually, it's great working with both Range Safety, Air Force Range Safety, and FAA. They've actually been quite supportive of the whole plan.
But do you need a license for that type of activity? And if so, do you have it?
Yeah, you need a license, and we expect to get it.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
And your next question comes from Jeff Faust from the Space Review.
You mentioned in the beginning that you had recovered portions of the first stage. I wonder if you can go into any more detail on exactly what you got, and did you get any video of the reentry?
Yeah, we actually do have some great video of the reentry. It's coming back. It's actually on the boat, or boats, I should say. So we don't have the. We should be able to post that maybe later this week. Yeah, there's some pretty cool video, and in terms of components, I think we've. I mean, this is, bear in mind, this is coming from. There's a fast boat, and then there's a bigger slow boat, and then it goes to mission control, and then to me. So there's like 4 levels of broken telephone here. So to take this with a grain of salt. But the latest I heard was that they were able to recover the interstage and a number of the components from the engine bay and some of the composite overwrap pressure vessels. That's all I know at this point. There may be more.
Thanks.
And your next question comes from Tariq Malik from Space.com.
Hello, Elon. Thank you so much for taking our questions today. A great launch from Vandenberg, and my main question was really, what type of flexibility, that dual launch site capability on West and East Coast gives you now, in terms of either, more customers for satellite launches or more flexible launches to station. If you can give us the options you now have with that dual capability, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. I think the most important thing that being able to launch from Vandenberg and the Cape gives us is the ability to reach any orbit. So we can go to any inclination at this point. And for mid-inclination missions, as you mentioned, like going to the space station orbit, we could conceivably do space station missions from either the Cape or Vandenberg. Our default plan is to do that from the Cape, but if there was, let's say, some terrible storm at the Cape, some hurricane with, Force 5 hurricane or something, that damaged the Cape launch facilities, we could, in an emergency, transition to launching and resupplying the space station from Vandenberg. So I think it's good to have that optionality. And then we're continuing forward with a third launch site, which is likely to be Texas, but we're still waiting for all the final approvals. And then even within the Cape, we're going to be expanding our activities, and hopefully, once this sort of silliness around Pad 39A is resolved, hopefully we'll be able to have 2 launch pads at the Cape, and that'll enable us to focus our Air Force and intelligence missions on Pad 40 and kind of our civil space missions for NASA, sort of cargo resupply, astronaut transport, and science missions from 39A. So hopefully that's what happened there.
Thank you. And I guess just a quick follow-up. I'm wondering if anything from this version informs the work that's going on Falcon Heavy, or if they are 2 completely separate vehicles now at this stage in the Heavy development.
It definitely informs the Heavy development, because the Falcon Heavy is essentially Falcon 9 with 2 additional boost stages attached as strap-on boosters. So it's the same engines that we use. It's a very similar airframe. Airframe will be slightly optimized for the fact that it is a side booster. But the avionics will be the same as the Falcon 9 first stage, and how we control the whole thing will be very, very similar. And then when the 3 boost stages will separate, they'll come back and land individually, and they'll behave just like the Falcon 9 boost stage. All 3 of them will come back hopefully and land on 3 separate pads, and then we'll join them back together for a future flight and launch them.
And your next question comes from Joseph Abbott from Waco Tribune Herald.
Hello. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I was wondering if you could talk about the time frame for the SES and TICOM launch, and also about the time frame for when Falcon Heavy testing would begin at the McGregor site.
Sure. So we're expecting to complete the SES and TICOM missions in the next 2 to 3 months. SES hopefully in about a month, and then TICOM a month or two after that. And then the NASA CRS launch, which will be when we'd hopefully have the landing legs on early next year. In terms of heavy testing, we're just finishing the big Falcon Heavy test stand in McGregor, and putting the final touches on that. One thing I should mention is that even though Falcon Heavy will be 3 times the thrust of Falcon 9, it actually will probably be quieter for people in Waco or in surrounding areas, because the Falcon 9 test stand is kind of up on this tall tripod, whereas the Falcon Heavy stand is buried in the ground. It sort of goes down, and so there'll be less, I think probably less sound transmitted, even though it's 3 times the thrust. But that'll be a very exciting test firing to watch, and we're hopefully going to have one of those done, I'm guessing, in second quarter next year.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And your next question comes from Janine Belly with Santa Maria Times.
Hi there. When is next Falcon launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base, and did you see any unexpected damage at or have it's still preliminary, but any kind of surprise damage out there?
Actually, this launch site looks like it's in great shape, with the exception of some air conditioning ducts that clearly need to be replaced.
Okay.
So the fairing air conditioning ducts got zapped, but the strong back and the erector and the stand itself look like they're in great shape. So we'll improve the robustness of the air conditioning lines, and we'll also do a complete checkup, see is there anything else that requires additional heat shielding or blast shielding of some kind. But just looking at the video, it looks pretty good.
Okay.
And then let's see, I'm not sure when our next flight is from Vandenberg. So I've been so focused on this flight, I haven't been paying much attention to anything that isn't super near term. It's certainly a huge relief to have successfully delivered Cassiopeia to orbit. This has been weighing on me quite heavily. So yeah.
Can you say if it's like in 2014, 15 for the next launch from Vandenberg?
Actually, if you look at I'd have to look at our manifest on the website.
I'll look there. Okay.
Sorry, my apologies. I'm not having that information.
Well, and
right
ditto.
away.
I've been so focused on this one too. So. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks.
And your next question comes from Yves Grottinen with NASASpaceflight.com.
All right. Yes, that's our goal is to recover the first stage on all CRS flights, and really on most flights. The next 2 flights are somewhat of an exception, because when we negotiated these deals, we didn't have much bargaining power. It was before we'd obviously flown this version of Falcon 9 successfully, and so we kind of agreed to give up all performance on the rocket and not reserve anything for reusability. But going into the future, with future contracts, with a few exceptions, we have reserved enough performance to recover the stage. So it's not just CRS flights, but it should be most flights after these next 2. And then in terms of when we actually refly the stage, it's going to depend on what condition the stage is in, and obviously getting customers comfortable with that. So it's difficult to say when we would actually refly it. If things go super well, then we will be able to refly a Falcon 9 stage before the end of next year. That's our aspiration.
And your last question, Stephen Hart, flight now.
Hi, Elon. Just a quick question for you. I wanted to switch gears to commercial crew, and can you talk a little bit about some of the milestones you have coming up in the next month there, specifically the pad abort test and how that's go and accomplish that?
Sure. We're getting a little off topic on the on the current flight, so this press conference is mostly about that. But I'll answer this question, and then. But I don't want to go too much into the Crew Dragon or Dragon version 2. We'll definitely do a press event around that, but just not today. But that launch abort test is is planned for next year. It's in approximately Q2. That should be a really exciting test. Because the Dragon spacecraft is going to a paddleboard means you sort of mount it as though it's on a rocket. For those that don't know, and then you fire the escape thrusters, the Super Draco thrusters, and it just bolts out of there at 6 Gs. So it's gonna go like a bullet, and then come back and land. So that should be exciting. Probably Q2 next year. There's a whole series of additional tests. At some point, we want to do kind of a big public unveiling of Dragon version 2, which we want to coordinate with NASA, obviously, because it looks pretty cool, I think, and it's meaningfully different from Dragon version 1.
And there are no further questions at this time. Do you have any closing remarks?
No, thanks, everyone. Yeah, I think many exciting days ahead. We'll keep you informed as there are new developments. Thanks.
And this concludes today's conference call. You may now disconnect.